good afternoon and good evening wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another Surpass pre-release webinar. This week I'm joined by Georgina Page from our documentation and training team, and we're going to be taking you through some of the latest features which are going to be coming out in the next release of Surpass. Before we start, I just want to remind you of a couple of activities that are going on at the moment, or future events. The next webinar will be on the Test Centre Network, and that's going to be in January on the 23rd. And this time we're going to be on tour. We're going to be going to one of our test centre providers, and we're going to be talking about what's involved in becoming part of the Test Centre Network. And it should be useful for customers who are looking to deliver assessments within the network, but also for any test centre providers out there who are looking to take part in it as well. So this is a global test centre network, and we've been delivering thousands of tests so far with it, and we've got some really good rich customers on it, so it's really worth getting involved in. The other thing just to bring to your attention, if you haven't heard already, is the eAssessment Association Awards. Now they're due for submission at the end of December. Now this is a really good opportunity that if you are someone who's involved in the assessment and wants some recognition for that work, so whether you're a provider, an awarding organisation who's done some innovative work in that area, or you're researching in the area, or you know of someone who deserves recognition, as Bob Gummersall, our chairman, did this year's awards, then it's really worth entering. Now if you go to eAssessment, if you search eAssessment Association or eAssessment Awards, you'll be able to find information about submitting. We do strongly recommend that people do so. We had some fantastic winners who are Surpass platform users last year. So just a reminder, we're going to be talking about the pre-release features within Surpass, and we're going to be taking you through what we call kind of 12-12. So Georgina, do you want to kind of kick off really and start talking about, I believe we're going to talk about changes to improve the candidate experience first.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of features that we've added to improve the candidate experience, or managing the candidate experience. The first one is the NDA box. So this is the terms and conditions that you present to the candidate before they start the test. Previously to 12-12, the candidate was presented with this smaller box. So you could add up to 4,000 characters of text in test creation, but it would always be presented in this smaller box. So if there was a lot of text, then the candidate would have to scroll through all that information. But we've now made changes in Surpass 12 to make that NDA box larger. So it will default, if the text is 400 characters or less, it will default to the smaller size, but if it's more than 400 characters, then the box will default to the larger size. So the candidate can reduce that if they want to, or they can expand it if it's the smaller size and they want to see the expanded larger version as well.
So this is quite a logical change really, because obviously terms and conditions are getting bigger, and to pigeonhole that in the original scrolling box would have been quite a tight space, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So this gives you more options. I think it's also just worth reminding people that if you look at the branding that goes on around this as well, you do have control over that as well within 12. So you can, for instance, change logos that are in the delivery environment, within the reports, change the colour schemes, etc. So there are quite some extensive changes which are available alongside this new feature, aren't there?
Yeah, and you can already do that within the test profiles in test creation.
Super duper. Okay, so as a reminder, anyone watching this, if you've not seen one of these before, webinars are there for questions. So if you do have any questions as we go through this, please feel free to drop them through. I've got an iPad here with them all dropping through, so please do get in touch and we'll do our best to respond to them. So what's next?
Yeah, so the next thing is some additions to navigation within tests for candidates. So just to remind you first about the different navigation options that we have already, and then I'll tell you about the new feature that's coming in 12.12. So firstly, we've got standard navigation. So you set that up by applying custom branding to a test in the test settings. So this means that the candidate can navigate wherever they want to within the test. They've got the full breadcrumbs down the left, they've got next and previous buttons at the bottom, and they can go between sections and between items how they want to. So this is more like, for example, a paper test where you can't control how the candidate answers the questions.
I think this is, like you say, it's always been one of those comparisons between paper and on screen, and it is something you can't stop them doing in a paper examination, aren't they? So yeah, this is the standard way, just fly through the exam as you wish.
Yeah, exactly. But we also offer forward-only navigation. So again, this is set up in test settings, and this means that the candidate must move forward through the test. they can only answer the next item that's presented to them, and they won't have access to the breadcrumbs, they'll just have access to the next button. So this is forward-only navigation, which is already available within Surpass.
Okay, so it's kind of very linear, straightforward, straight-through testing. Okay.
Yeah. The next one is forward-only section. So you can make one section in a custom branding test forward only. So that means that just within that section, the candidate will have to answer the next question that's presented to them. So just in that section, they'll only have access to the next buttons. So this is set up in your test form. So in the section properties, you just tick forward only section. And this is where we've made some enhancements. So in 12.12, you can set up a forward only section with item review. So this means that within that forward only section, the candidate would be able to go back and view items that they'd already answered, but in a read-only mode. So they won't be able to edit the answers, they'll just be able to look at what they put. So this might be useful if in later questions the candidate will need to use the information that they've previously put in for a previous item. They'll have to use that information in a later question.
I think just going back to this particular example here, one of the things that struck me with this is there was the skills test that had a mental arithmetic section at the start where candidates were effectively forced through that section on a timed basis. Now you can apply timings to these sections, can't you? So,
yes, you can.
So you can say you've only got so long in this particular section, and then the next one you've only got so long. What happens when the time runs out within the section?
Yeah, so the time's not carried over, the section would just finish and you'd move on to the next section.
Okay, and obviously with the review option, but this kind of particular version, this is a great example for if you're looking at doing case studies where you want to give the candidates some information at the start of the examination, have them review that information, maybe gather some information, answer some questions. You may still have some questions within there, and then use some of that information later on, but not be able to edit their answers.
Yeah.
Okay, so perfect, excellent. So that's it for candidate experience examples.
Yeah. I could just show you how it looks.
Oh,
in
sorry, yes,
delivery.
apologies.
So
I'm jumping ahead.
to set it up in test creation, you'd go to the section properties. So that means you'd select the top level section folder. So for example, I've selected section A here. Then if I go to edit, I can edit the section properties. So here I've made this a forward only section and I've allowed item review as well. So that's the new feature. We'd also recommend that you tick items require response. It's not necessary, but it means that the candidate will have to answer the question before they move on to the next question. If I show you in delivery, so this is a forward only section like I've just showed you. If I answer the question and move to next, I can answer this question, but I can also go back and view this question. I can't change it, I can just view the answer to this question. Yeah, so that's it for candidate.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. I'll try to resist jumping ahead. Okay, support for item writings is the next topic. So there's some lovely new features coming in here. So do you want to talk us through them?
Yeah. So the first thing is the item history. So in 12.11, the item history was a bit less detailed. So we still had the information about which user had edited the item, when they'd edited it, the status that it was changed to, if it was changed, and then brief information about the changes made and any comments added. But that's now even more detailed in 12.12. So this is the start of what we're going to create a version compare within Surpass. So you'll be able to compare the current version of an item with a previous version of an item, and this is just phase one of that.
Okay, so you're going to show us what this looks like within Surpass then?
Yeah. So if we select the item history button at the bottom of the editing screen, it will bring up the item history, and then we can see at the bottom that various options have been added to the key. So you've got when something has been added, removed, when a correct answer option has been added, and it also documents when an answer option has still remained and it's been unchanged. So you've got the full audit history for that item. So you can see here the first thing that was changed about this item was that it was put into a folder, so you can see the folder name here. And then when there's multiple details, you can use this arrow to expand, and you can see here that all the answer options were added, a correct answer option was selected, the name was added, and then tags were also added, and it tells you exactly what was added. It gives you all the details for that, so you can see exactly what was changed.
There's quite in-depth information there, isn't there? So
yeah.
Now, obviously that's seeing the changes that have gone on. Are we planning to enable people to be able to compare versions and maybe even revert back to a version?
Yeah, so that's the plan for the future, to have that version compare so you can actually see the items, the different versions of them on screen. So that is coming in the future.
Okay, excellent. So some really nice features there. Okay. Anything else in terms of support for item writers?
Yeah, so another thing that will hopefully make item writers' jobs a bit easier is some enhancements to duplicating items. So at the moment you have the option to duplicate, so you've got the duplicate button here, and if you select that it will completely copy that item over, so including any settings, any enemy items, source material, everything that you've got within your item will be copied. The only things that will be changed is the name, which will change to copy of that name, and then the status will be changed to draft no matter what the status is at. However, now you've got some extra options, so if you select the arrow next to duplicate, you can see the options. So you've got options for enemies and also for tags. So just to recap, enemies are items that can never be in the same test as another item.
Because they may have information that may aid the candidate in that response?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Or there could just be too close a similar item, couldn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So you can choose whether the duplicate should retain the original item's enemy, so it should just be a complete copy, or whether it should become an enemy of the original item. So that might be useful if, for example, you're copying it to then slightly tweak it, but essentially they're going to be quite similar items. So you might want it to become an enemy and never appear in the same test. You can also edit tags. So here it's automatically selecting all tag groups and categories, but if you use the menu you can select specific tag groups that you want to be copied over, so you don't have to copy all the tags. So this is useful. It's automating what would then be a manual process if you had to just duplicate and then go into each item and change the tags or the enemies manually. You can do it automatically.
Okay, excellent, very good, very good.
Yep, and the last one is to do with item sets. So just to remind you again, item sets are essentially a collection of items that must appear in the same test together. So we've got an example here. All of these items are to do with the same case study, so you might want them all to definitely appear in the same test.
Now, some people call these friends, wouldn't they? That's
yeah.
kind of, yeah.
That's
so,
another term for them.
Yeah. So they're grouping them together, really, aren't they? So.
Yeah. Okay. So they form a friend relationship, so they have to go in together. So if I put this item in a test, then the other one in the item set would also have to follow it. Okay. The feature in this release is the ability to add tags to item sets. So again, a bit like duplicating items, this will automate what might be a manual process. So if you have an item set, you would have to go into each item individually previously to 12.12 and edit the tags. But with this feature, you can go into an item set itself and then edit the settings here. So at the moment we've got one learning outcome added here. You could add other tags as well. So we can see here there's one setting added. And if we go into one of the items within that item set, we can see at the bottom in the settings that there's now another section. So we've got individual item tags. So these are the tags that have been applied at the item level, so just to this item. So we've got a learning outcome and a Bloom's taxonomy tag as well. But then we've got the item set tags as well. So here is that tag that was added at the item set level. So we can see it is on the item. So again, like I said, with duplicating items, it's an automation of a manual process.
So these really are kind of great controls for the extensive range of metadata choices, really, and selections you have within Surpass.
Yeah, and then this metadata can be used to filter items in, for example, item search or test creation. You can find your items there. So if I just go into item search, I've run a search here for multiple choice questions. There's now a new column that shows you what item set each item is in. So here we can see the two that I was just looking at in my subject. And when you create an item list, you can choose to include items from item sets that aren't necessarily matching your search criteria. So we've enhanced what you can do with item sets. Okay,
so some really great searching, because it's not just, once you're building a bank, if you've got thousands of items within that bank, you can't just let people scroll through those items to find them, but you need search tools to make use of this metadata, and that's what we've done with this, haven't we? So it's really extend that out. It's also just worth, item sets are slightly different from item groups, aren't they? Just remind me what item groups are.
So item sets are just in item authoring, like I said, it's that friend relationship, whereas item groups are set up when you create a test. So in the test wizard or test creation, you can group items so they appear on one scrollable page instead of separate pages.
Yeah. Okay, so there's lots of options there, and of course, any point if you want to ask us any questions here today, I'm more than happy to try and help. But also, don't forget we have the learning portal, the knowledge base. So learn.surpass.com. There's video files and there's an extensive range of documentation and information there for you to go through. There's also a Surpass Expert test as well that you can take. Where you can be basically crowned with the glory of being a Surpass expert. I've done it.
Me too.
So that's good to hear. So it's really worth checking that out. So if there is anything here today that you want to extend your information about, if you want to get in touch, by all means do so. But obviously the Learn portal and the knowledge base is there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next then?
So we've got some enhancements to items individually. So we've got two features here that I just want to briefly talk through. One are the enhancements to file attach, and the other is some HTML enhancements.
And I must admit, this is the kind of one that I'm quite excited about. We just under a year ago, we did a big webinar, one of the first ones actually, about endpoint assessments. Now, it isn't the be-all and end-all of file attach, but I do believe that this has got some great potential to extend it out. And also, there were some questions asked as part of that about the presentation of the file attach. So I'm sure if you watch that particular webinar, you'll see the improvements that we've made. So do you want to talk us through these then?
Yeah, so previously to 12.12, there was just one version of file attach. It was only available in mixed subjects, and it was what we are now calling the standard view. So you could upload one file or provide a blank file for the candidate to download, and then they could upload one file back into the test. So that's what we now call the standard way of doing it. However, we now have an advanced mode for file attach, which means that you can attach up to 10 files for the candidate to download. So they can be files you've uploaded from your computer or blank files, and then the candidate can re-upload up to 10 files again. So if I just show you how to create this in the system, I'm actually currently in an HTML subject, so file attach is also supported here. And select your file attach question type, and then you've got this toggle here. So standard toggle allows you to upload one file or use one blank file. However, the advanced mode allows you to add up to 10 files here that the candidate can then download. You also have the option here to customize the label. So the label means the kind of download area, it's the title that appears at the top. And you can also customize each individual button to download the file. So that could, for example, be a translation of an instruction, or it could be more specific instructions to help the candidate understand what they have to do. These can be a mixture of blank and uploaded files, depending on what you want to do with the question.
Now, these aren't just limited to kind of standard file types like Word documents, are they? You could, in theory, provide them with CAD drawings, or give them the option to upload CAD drawings or accountancy-based files as well. So if you're using other applications as part of your testing process, if you have a specific tool that the candidates have to use, then there's no reason why you can't provide those, whether it's part of a kind of lockdown or maybe even as part of an open book assessment. Yeah,
exactly. So linking with that, we've got some extra settings here, so you can specify the file extensions. Again, it doesn't have to be Word documents or PowerPoints or Excel spreadsheets or anything. It can be more than that, so you specify that here. And you can also specify a minimum and a maximum number of files that you want the candidate to upload, so you can really control how you want the candidate to interact with this. You can also say the maximum file size, so this is per file, and you can control how big you want the file to be here.
And it's probably worth making sure the candidate is aware of that file size before you as part of the assessment, so within your instructions it's probably worth putting them there, because otherwise they might get to the point where they've created a Goliath of a file and they can't upload it. So use the information, the advanced authoring to put that information in.
Yeah, exactly. And just to briefly show how it looks in delivery, so instead of those icons now you've got these individual buttons which are presented to the candidate with your customised text on them. So it's a bit more customisable for you.
Well, it's certainly more usable. I know with the standard, what we are calling the standard, it was one of the questions that was specifically asked, can we make some changes to the way this is presented?
Yeah.
And I think this is a great improvement in this area. So excellent, well done. We've got a few more in this area, haven't we?
Yeah, so like I said, this is an HTML subject, and the next couple of things I'm going to talk about are just specific to HTML subjects, so they're not supported in mixed subjects. So if we have some text in here, at the moment this feature is here, but there's only 3 styles that you can add. So styles are basically formatting the text for you. So it's adding something extra to change the appearance of the text. And like I said, these are specific to HTML. So prior to 12.12, there were these 3 styles here, so border, emphasis and symbol padding. However, we've now added capitals, so puts the text in capitals, no wrapping, which means it doesn't go on to the next line, and then strong emphasis, which changes the font and the text colour as well. So those 3 styles have been added, so they could be used to emphasise a certain word in a question, or to make it clearer for the candidate where they put their answer. So you can do this in answer options as well. One other thing that's been added in HTML subjects in text boxes is inline equations. So instead of being able to toggle between text and equations within your text boxes, you now have the option to add equations using the advanced menu. So if we select equations, we can put in our equation, and then you can format the text here, so we can change the colour, for example, or we can change the font, and then press OK to put it into that text box. So here you can't edit it in here, you'd have to either double click or press the equation editor again to open that equation and edit it. But the main benefit of this is that you can then apply a style to it, so you can put a border around it and make it clearer to the candidate what the equation is doing, or draw their attention to that equation, for example.
Is there a particular example where you would use the kind of styles option? What would that do for the candidate?
So for example, if you've got a numerical entry question, you might want to put a border around the area where the candidate would input their numerical answer, for example. So it's clear to them, this is where I've got to answer. Okay,
excellent. And the Wirus editor, or the mathematical equations editor, is quite a powerful tool, really, isn't it? And having that in line as part of the service is quite a handy feature. Now, these kind of features we are going to be seeing more and more of in terms of HTML based activity, so it's certainly one to listen into and keep in tune with, and there's going to be, I think there's fantastic potential for this, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, so is that in terms of enhancements? For the enhancements to items, are we doing that? Okay, so let's have a look at enhancements to test creation.
Yeah, so there's a couple of enhancements to test creation. The first one is the ability to pin items within a randomised section. So a randomised section is where the items are shuffled around, basically. So for each candidate or for each test form, the items are moved around. They're not in the order that you've put them. So this might be to prevent cheating, for example. So not all candidates are presented with the items in the same order. So within a section where the items are randomised, or the rules are randomised, you can pin an item. So here, for example, I've got 3 items within my section. One of them's an information page, and I know I need that to be at the start because it tells the candidates how to answer the questions. So I can select this item and then select the pin button, and then a little icon will appear that says that it's been pinned, and that means that when the test is delivered to candidates, that item will definitely appear at this point in the section, but the other items will be randomised as before.
So it's kind of making sticky items, isn't it?
Yes.
Something that people talk about in terms of forums, but yeah, it's forcing it into that position within the structure. Exactly,
but I can easily unpin it if I change my mind and want to do something different.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the first one. The second one is adding non-scored items to your test form. So, for example, if you've got a bank of pre-test items that you want to generate data on before they're used in live tests, then you, instead of creating multiple test forms with different pre-test items in them, you can have them dynamically selected for each test that's delivered to candidates. So the way you do this is you'd select the top level and then select Edit, and then you'd browse for your folders. Sorry, I think it's been sat there for too long. If I just go into it again.
That's right. It's one of the problems with getting prepared for webinars.
Prepared too early.
Yeah.
Yeah, so select here. Yeah, browse. And then you can select the folders containing non-scored items. So we recommend that you name them clearly so that when you select them at this point, you know exactly which ones you wanted to select. You can select multiple ones at the same time using Control or Shift, and then select OK. So we've got 2 folders selected. So they're the folders that will have the pretest items chosen from when the test is delivered. So if I select OK, they are kind of in that bank there for the test, but I need to add them to specific points within the test form. So if I click on a section, an arrow will appear next to Add. If I select Add Pretest Rule, I can name my rule, and I can pick the minimum and maximum number of items I want to be selected from the folder of pretest items at that point. So select OK. We've got the rule here. We can drag it to a different position if we like within the test. And then when the test is delivered, the desired amount of items will be chosen and will be put into the test at that point. It's worth pointing out that for each test that's delivered, the items will only be chosen from one folder per test. So it's just items from that one folder that will be put in at this point. And you can have multiple pre-test rules within your test.
So with these kind of pre-testing non-scored items, it's something which is growing more and more. The kind of days when, in that kind of journey, you've got going from paper, having a fixed form test, to having a fixed form on-screen test, and then now once you've kind of mastered that, you can really start to make the most out of on-screen delivery. So I don't know if you've seen, we did some recent webinars around loft and linear optimization. This was a webinar that we did myself with Tom Gummersall, one of our technical geniuses really here at BTL. He's been working on basically enhancing the way that loft is devised and delivered within Surpass. So it's worth checking that out. There was also some more presentations as part of the Surpass conference. So if you go to conference.surpass.com, you'll see the archive from 2017 and the people like Leanne talking about that from Prometric, Dave Dixon, one of our senior solutions architects here as well, talking about these changes and enhancements we're making to the way that we handle data within the idea of pre-testing and automated item delivery. So it's well worth checking those out if you want to see more about that. Okay, so in terms of enhancements to test creation, are we about done there?
That's
Excellent. Okay, so the final thing we're going to cover is APIs. So APIs are the kind of under the hood integration options that you have within Surpass. If we just have a quick look at Georgina's screen, there's an immense array of APIs. We have constant feedback from some of the technical people that we work with at organisations, and they're always complimenting us on the way that we enable integration within Surpass. So the 2 areas we have is retrieving documents submitted as responses to the file attach item and new test session get method. So do you want to talk us through the file attach item first, please?
Yeah, so this is a way of retrieving documents that have been uploaded by candidates through file attach and getting them out of Surpass. So you can do that using a key code from a candidate. So if I select this, so you insert your key code and then you show item responses, and then it will bring back the candidate's response, and here we've got the lovely encoded file that the candidate has uploaded. So you'd obviously need to decode that to retrieve the file, but it's one way of getting the file out of Surpass.
But it's a great, it's being able to access that data. So if there is, for any reason, you need to look at that information as part of a wider assessment program. So whether it's passing it on for review, external markers, etc., then that's always an option that you can do within Surpass. Don't be put off by this kind of interface. The test harness is a very powerful arrangement. It is used really as a means of trying out your ideas and your approaches, and learning about the structure before you commit your coders to really going in through the back door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's getting documents. The other one is getting a test session. So again, we use a key code here. So put your key code in and send, and we can get the status and the date and the start time and end time for this test. So it supports all tests up to the submitted state when you get the test session in this way.
So it's useful data to have through and to appreciate where the state of the test is, really.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so if you do have any questions about APIs, I'm sure myself and Georgina aren't qualified to answer those. If you have any questions about any of the kind of wider features that we've covered as part of the session today, then please do send them through. And the solutions architect teams, particularly in terms of the API, will be more than happy to handle them. So, when are we getting this?
We are getting this at the start of January. Okay,
so plenty of time to enjoy your holiday breaks, and then when you arrive back fresh for a new year, 2018 is going to be a fantastic new year. You'll be able to get stuck into some of these lovely new features. So thank you very much for your time today. Just a very quick reminder in terms of those future sessions. We have the Insights into the BTL Test Centre Network on the 23rd of January, and don't forget the e-assessment awards deadline is looming. It's the 31st of December, and it's really worth getting yourself recognised. If you have any questions, please do drop them through. We've got marketing@btl.com, and I'm sure ourselves will be able to handle those and send them back to you. So thank you very much for it. If you are taking a break, then enjoy it, and we'll see you soon in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you.